Hi, I'm Rita. Welcome back to my YouTube channel, Life Worth Reading. Today I'll be filming my January/February wrap-up. I'm going to be telling you about most of the books that I read during those 2 months, and we'll just talk through because I haven't given you like a wrap-up of my year so far, and it's already like the middle of March, so I really need to catch up on the books that I have read. And so today we're going to be talking about 9 books that I read in January and February. I read a couple more, but I'm not going to be mentioning those. And so without further ado, let's just get into it. I quite honestly don't like doing wrap-ups, which is why I haven't done one in a while, but I actually love watching them, so it's very strange. But I think that the way that I'm going to organize this is by my least favorite books to my favorite books. I haven't read any bad books this year yet, so all of these like least favorites are all pretty standard ratings, so I don't have any like bad books to talk about. The book that I rated the lowest is actually, I rated a couple of books the same rating, but it was actually Gingerbread by Ellen Oyeyemi. This I rated like a 3.5, and this was a very confusing story. I posted a vlog about this, so if you want to check out my in-depth thoughts and as I was reading what I thought of this book, you can check that out. But honestly, I thought that this book was a little bit strange, a little bit weird, which I'm not actually opposed to. I actually do enjoy a weird book, but it was just a little bit confusing. You know, it wasn't just strictly weird, it was also just confusing to me, and so I couldn't really give it a higher rating than this, but it also really stuck with me. So this book is about a small family. We have a grandmother, a mother, and a daughter, and the mother and daughter are Harriet and Perdita respectively, and they come from this faraway land which may not exist, that's called Druhashtrana. And it's like this fairy tale land where Harriet grew up, and we see a lot of her story there and what growing up there was like. And she meets this girl named Gretel, and she's like this, they call her changeling. It's very strange, it's all very strange. And so Harriet becomes a gingerbread girl. Do I really know what that entails? Not really. Like, I just didn't fully understand it. And so the story is basically about how Perdita found out this about her mother, and she tried to go to this Druhashtrana land, and it didn't go very well. And so when she comes back, she makes her mom tell her like exactly what happened when she grew up. Basically, it's all like a big metaphor for immigration, because after Harriet leaves Druhashtrana, she goes to England, I think maybe London, and she is invited by this rich family, and they're like doing her a favor and all of that. And so and she feels like she doesn't fit in because she comes from this like faraway land. And so it's very much about like immigration and not belonging. And I thought that that was really interesting because all the characters in this book, at least this family, they are all black. And so it really is a metaphor for coming from this faraway land and not fitting in, and people not making space for you. And so I really enjoyed that aspect of it. I just wish that it wasn't so confusing, the rest of it, because I feel like I truly didn't understand what happened in this land before. It was much easier to understand when they came to London, but when they were in this land, like, I just could not really understand what was happening there. So that's why I rated this a little bit lower, but I still really did enjoy it. The next book that I rated 3.5 stars was Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers by Jessie Sutanto. I picked this book up from my library. There's also a vlog where I read this book. I put out a lot of vlogs in those months where I read the majority of these books. And I gave this a 3.5 because I had a great time with it. We are following Vera Wong, and she owns this little tea shop in San Francisco, in Chinatown. And one day she wakes up and she finds a body there, and she doesn't really know what happened, and the police say that it was accidental, but she doesn't really believe that. And so she dives into this full-blown investigation that she is organizing, and just the way that it is written is very fun. I have also read Dial A for Aunties by Jessie Sutanto. I think I enjoyed this one more. It was more grounded in reality, which I appreciated. And Vera is just this meddling grandma, but she's also so unbelievably kind. She creates like this found family of her suspects, which is really fun. And I liked following the mystery, and I just overall had a good time. Like, it wasn't a favorite or anything, but it was a very fast read. It was enjoyable. Also, the descriptions of food were amazing, like Cantonese food. It was just amazing. So I really enjoyed this book. Wasn't a favorite, but I think I actually did enjoy it a little bit more than Deadly for Aunties, because the mystery was a little bit more grounded in reality, which I appreciate, because Deadly for Aunties got a little bit too crazy towards the end, and so I think I enjoyed this more. But it's still not like a memorable book forever, you know? Then another book that I gave 3.5 stars was actually Black Cake by Charmaine Wilkerson. I also picked this up from the library. I buddy read this with my friend Mafalda, also in the same blog where I read Gingerbread. And to me, Black Cake was interesting because I feel like the problem that I had with this book was due to the translation. I feel like the original, I read it in Portuguese, and I feel like the original English version has some more lyrical and beautiful writing that I was deprived of because I was reading the translation. And so what ended up happening is that I wasn't really connecting with the characters as much as this book wants you to, because this is a very character focused book. Like, you're just following this family, you're just following all of these characters in different circumstances and things that are happening to them. And so because of that, I just couldn't really connect. Like, the writing, the translation was very matter of fact, it was very straightforward, it was very non-lyrical, and so it was just like I was reading more like facts instead of reading a story. And so I feel like my problem with this book was actually just because I read the translated version, which most of the time I don't mind reading translated versions, but sometimes these kind of things happen, and this time it really I think impacted my enjoyment of this book. Because this book is about a family, it's about, oh my god, I forgot the mother's name. I really can't remember, but it's about like this mother, and we have the 2 children, Byron and, oh my god, Bryce, is it? Maybe not. And the mother has just passed away, and she leaves them with this recording of her life story. And so they grew up in California, but they actually find out that the mother has come from the Caribbean, and there's just like this whole life story, and we are jumping like back and forth. And I think that one thing that I will mention about this book that I didn't really enjoy was that the main characters were very fleshed out, but I feel like sometimes the chapters were really short, and sometimes we just kind of like glossed over things that I felt were really important and really like even traumatic, and that would certainly affect them, and we just like glossed over it. And I wish we could have seen a little bit more of how those situations impacted their lives. And also towards the end, like, the timelines were a little bit confusing. Like, we were always jumping back and forth, and at a certain point I was a little bit lost. And because of all those reasons, I ended up giving it a 3.5. But yeah, I just feel like it really hindered my enjoyment to read this translation. So I really don't not want to recommend this book, and I feel like everyone loved this book. So Mafalda also really loved it. She gave it 5 stars, I think. So I feel like it really was like a me problem with this specific translation. But yeah, I ended up giving it like a 3.5. And the last book that I want to talk about before we move on to the 4-star category, this book is the closest to a 4-star, I think. I feel like I just wasn't in the right mindset when I was reading this book, and that is Open Water by Caleb Azuma Nelson. I don't know what it was. I think I was expecting a little bit more out of this book, and I feel like I didn't really connect with the characters. Like, the love story was really beautiful. We have like 2 main characters that live in, no, one of them lives in Dublin and the other one lives in London, and they like meet through like a mutual friend, and they start this like friendship, and then it turns into something more. And it was really beautiful to read about. It had a lot of vulnerability, a lot of love, and like young love, but also a lot of what it means to be Black in England and like the Black experience, which was really refreshing to read, because we have like a man that is so vulnerable and so raw with his feelings and with his emotion, which was really refreshing to see someone that wasn't like always just actively repressing their emotions. Obviously there was an internal struggle in that. It wasn't just all like this honesty, and sometimes he did hold back and it also hindered his relationship, but just it was just really refreshing to see. I don't really know how to explain exactly what it was that made me not like give this book 4 or like 5 stars, but it was really close to a 4. I really enjoyed the writing. I do want to read the next book that this author has published, but I don't know, there was just something about like the timing in which I read this book that just made me not enjoy it as much as I hoped that I would. Next up in the 4-star category, I read Young Mungo by Douglas Stewart. Yeah, Douglas Stewart, for the 20-something book club for January. And this book was really hard to read. It's about our main character, Young Mungo, and he grows up in Glasgow, and there's like this ongoing like gang war between Christians and Protestants, and he's like in this really dysfunctional family. His father passed away when he was very young, and his mother is very young as well. She's like in her 30s, but she's like a full-blown alcoholic. She does not take good care of her children, and he has 2 older siblings. He has Jody, I think, and Hamish, who is a really destructive character. And it's about like his sadness and his surroundings, and also about a friend that he meets named James, and maybe something else develops there. And it was just very oppressive to read. It was really depressing. Like, it was so hard to read, but I really enjoyed it. The writing was great. Sometimes it was a little bit difficult to understand because there was a lot of like Scottish slang into it, so it was a little bit hard to understand. And most of the times, like, I just had to put the book down and like let it rest for a little bit, because yeah, there were some things in there that were really difficult to read. Maybe go check out the trigger warnings first, because yeah, like emotionally I did not have a good time, but as a reader I did. It was a good book, and I do want to read Shaggy Bane by the same author, but I just don't know when that would happen. Like I feel like I need to let it sit for a little bit before I try another one of his books, because they are really hard to read. Next up, also in the 4-star category, we have Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was a good exploration of the publishing industry, even though I know absolutely nothing about the publishing industry. And I agree that it could have been a little bit less, I don't want to say stereotypical, that's not really what I mean. It could have been less about like social media a little bit, but I still really enjoyed it. It's about our main character June, who steals a manuscript from her frenemy Athena, who is a much more established author than she is, after she passes away. So she like steals a manuscript and she makes it her own, and she finishes it and publishes it under her own name. And then it dives into like this whole investigation. And yeah, like our main character June, she was absolutely despicable, which I feel like it's interesting to read about sometimes, but you are absolutely not rooting for her in any point in the story, I don't think. But yeah, it was interesting. I had a good time with it. It was a fast read. Is it like the most profound, earth-shattering book R.F. Kuang has published? No, but you could tell that she had a lot of fun with it, and I had a lot of fun reading it. Now onto my 5-star reads. The first one that I'm going to talk about is actually a graphic novel that I read, which is called Ballad for Sophie. And this was a great graphic novel. I don't read a lot of them, but this made me want to read more. And I just had a great time with it. This is about a pianist named Julian, I think. And it's about him in his old age. And he is like this reclusive, closed-off person. And one time a girl comes to interview him, and he starts telling his life story. And I think that the best thing about this book were actually just like the illustrations. The storytelling was incredible. The story was a little bit cliche, I would say. Like, it didn't really surprise me or anything, but I was just so engrossed in the story, the illustrations, the way that it all flowed. Yeah, like it was really, really beautiful. I had an amazing time with it, and so I ended up giving it a 5-star, even though it wasn't like the most surprising or groundbreaking book. I just thought it was an amazing graphic novel, and it really spoke to me. Like the illustrations really, really spoke to me. And now my 2 favorite books that I've read so far this year. They both have their own reading vlogs, so you can go check that out. I am struggling. I honestly don't know which one is my absolute favorite, but I think I'm going to start with the one that I read first, which is A Lonely Castle in the Mirror by Mizuki Tsujimura. This is one of the first books that I read in 2024. It was a 5-star prediction, and it absolutely like gave me that. I think that this was like right timing, right book for me. I really needed to read this book when I read it, and it just impacted me emotionally in a way that I know it hasn't impacted other people. Obviously, there's a lot of people who love this book, but I feel like a lot of people don't really connect with it because it has a lot of like fluff in the middle. But let's talk about plot. This book is about our main character, Kokoro, and she hasn't been going to school. She's like in 7th grade, I think. And she hasn't been going to school because she has a lot of anxiety. Things happen at school, like things related to bullying. And so she's not currently going to school. And one day the mirror in her room like lights up and she can travel to it, and it's like this portal fantasy where she goes to this castle, and there's like this little girl with a wolf mask, and she's called like the Wolf Queen, and she gathered 7 kids, and she tells them that they have to find a key to the vanishing room in order to make a wish. And as soon as they make that wish, the castle collapses and they can never go back to it. Honestly, this book is just about being in this age and mental illness and struggling with your mental health and also making friends. They had a really great found family. And I feel like the thing that I appreciate the most about this book, other than the writing, which I really did enjoy, was just absolutely the support that these kids were given, because I feel like it's very cliche to have a book in which teenagers and preteens are not supported by the adult figures in their lives, and they are actually often let down by these figures. And I feel like in this book the author did a really great job of giving them a support system, which I really, really appreciated. And yeah, it was just like about a found family and also like this portal fantasy, and I bawled my eyes out, like absolutely bawled my eyes out, which does not happen with me with books. Like, I am not a book crier at all, and I bawled my eyes out when I realized what was actually going on. Yeah, I know a lot of people don't feel this immensely towards this, even though this book does have a lot of fans. But if this character-focused story seems like something that you would enjoy, maybe you're struggling a little bit with your mental health, I would definitely recommend this book, because yeah, it was just really, really comforting, and I had an amazing time with it. So one of my favorite books for sure. And the last book is the one that I've read the most recently out of all these I'm talking about, and that is Nightcrawling by Lila Motley. This is also a 5-star prediction that absolutely succeeded. Like, it exceeded my expectations for sure. And this book is about our main character Kiara and her brother Marcus, and they are really struggling in Oakland. Their parents are not around. The father is dead and the mother is like in this prison, and so they are struggling a lot. Marcus should be supporting Kiara because he is technically an adult, but he does not want to get a job. And so Kiara, being a minor, can't get a job either, and so she starts doing sex work, which dives her into this like really big police investigation and just brings her a lot of unwanted attention, and a lot of things happen in this book. The thing that I loved the most about this book was definitely the writing. The writing is spectacular. Lila Motley is so talented, absolutely. And it was just also really sad to read. Kiara was really struggling. She's also taking care of her neighbor, Tyler? It doesn't say here. I can't remember. I think it's Tyler. Trevor, that's it. And she starts also taking care of Trevor because he was also like kind of abandoned by his mom. And so there's just a lot of responsibility on her shoulders, and she wants to be an adult so bad, but things are just not going her way. And it's just a story of survival, honestly, in this rough environment that does not want her to succeed. So the writing was really beautiful. I tabbed a lot of quotes, and also the author's note saying that this is actually a true story that did happen in Oakland, and it's based on all the Black girls that couldn't be supported by their system. It was just like really hard to read. I didn't cry, but it was just so beautiful, and I really felt for Kiara and everything that she went through. And yeah, this was just like a really great book, and I feel like more people should read it because it was absolutely stunning, and I'm so glad that I read this book. Okay, and just like that, we have already talked about the 9 books that I wanted to tell you about. These are the books that I read in January and February, and hopefully I won't spend this much time without doing a wrap-up because it's very overwhelming when I have to like suddenly talk about all these books. In any case, I hope that you did enjoy this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more bookish content, and I'll see you in my next video. I hope you have a nice day, and always remember that life is worth reading.